I don't know which of the two screens it's going to record, whether it will record this screen or that one. So it may end up looking like the preview rather than the big picture here. And you'll notice that with the microphone that it picks me up real well, but not so much you. So I'll try to repeat the questions that you asked them and things that you said. And that way you can then record these. What I've done with these in the past is to, once I get them converted and whatnot, put them onto a private YouTube channel, and then just put the link to the YouTube video onto the campus site. Right? So you can play it back, and that way if you miss something while you're taking notes. But let me just say this one thing about these. This, if you had me before, it's redundant. But don't use this as your primary source of engaging with the material. Right? It is not intended to be your primary way to engage with the material. It's meant to be a backup. Because you, Crystal and Gracie can attest to this, that Mark forgets to hit the record button from time to time. Right? So if you're counting on it as, oh, let's go back and review the play it back, you know, tough, it might be tough from time to time, or the recording quality. But somebody wrote in their responses last semester that the recording quality was kind of not that great. And so we'll work on that. Right, I'll buy some equipment. Okay. Let's talk a bit about the Herbert reading. I've got the Manet picture that was actually figured very strongly in both of our readings so far. Up on the screen, rather large to look at, which is nice. But it is, after all, quite a large picture as well. I have a couple of questions to sort of start us off with. First, I want to notice when we read things in art history, we notice that art historians have a number of different ways that they can practice their craft. How do we learn about the history of art? How do we learn about art within its context? And you probably noticed that Herbert's reading had a very different approach from T.J. Clark. What did you notice that was different? How did his approach to trying to explain pictures in a historical context, how did that differ from T.J. Clark's? There are no wrong answers. What did you notice? Let's start with a straightforward question. Was it easier or harder? Significantly? Or just a little bit easier? A lot easier. Okay. So much less theoretical, right? Much easier, much less involved in sort of social history in a way. Although some of that is still there, isn't it? Quite a bit of historical background is available for you, but not it's high-minded, maybe? That's not, I don't like saying that because he's high-minded. Herbert is, right? But certainly less confusing. No sexism in the word. Really? I mean, really? Hang on. Project, duplicate, connect to a wireless display, connect to a wireless display, connect to a wireless display. While I do, I'm going to try, it's like trying to walk and talk at the same time. Let's close my PowerPoint and then try this. So, easier. What else did you notice about the way they approached art? What sort of, think about the sorts of things they focus on, how they approach evidence, what kind of evidence they use. What other things do you notice that were different about him? Herbert. If we go back to our response prompt, right? Our response prompt asks us, what is the nature of the evidence, for example, that the author is using? So, Clark focused very, very heavily on people's writings at the time. A lot of people reacting. What was the primary focus of Herbert's analysis? What was the primary evidence that he really spent more time focusing on it than any one thing? Talking about the artist, or more specifically about the works of art themselves, right? Did you notice that there was a whole lot more time spent with this? Sort of going through and saying, okay, I'm going to give you each of these paintings. I'm going to talk very specifically about what's in the painting and why it's there. Yet with the Clark reading, and maybe this is part of what made it more difficult, was that there was a whole section in the middle where he's not talking about paintings at all. A little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end, and there's about 20 pages in the middle. There was nothing really about paintings. It was relevant to paintings, but he's not actually reading the pictures themselves, if we can use that term, reading the pictures. What Clark was reading was society. He was reading Paris in a way, right? And he even talked about, often in his writings, about reading the city. How do we read the city, right? So he did this without having the city there in front of us to read, right? I'm going to try something here. I'm going to try and turn it off, and then try and turn it back on again and see if that helps, right? So Herbert is much more involved in actually reading the pictures. So if we think about our response prompts, and you didn't have to do one for this, one of the questions is what's the issue at hand? The other question is then what kind of conclusions do we derive? And the third one was what kind of evidence do they use to get there? And for T.J. Clark, it was very much an analysis of the city and what people had said about it. It was reading of the city. But for Herbert, it's much more a very close reading of the paintings. And that's what I'd like to spend our discussion today doing, since we didn't look at a lot of pictures on Tuesday, is to do a very close reading of these pictures, following what Herbert has to say. Right? And what I want to do, and I'm going to try to turn this back on again. Let's stop that. How do I disconnect? I don't want to, no, stop now. I wanted to start with the quote he has on page 20. This is a really important quote for us as budding art historians, right? You guys are, for an hour and 15 minutes, twice a week, are art historians, plus whatever time you do. Okay? So hopefully, by the end of the class, I can get you to be a major or minor in art history. It's about halfway down. In the paragraph that starts, Caillot's man at the window, and then just after footnote number 31. Okay. Halfway down. By choosing salient elements from daily life, the artist is far from neutral in his observations. Out of the vast array of objects and events that make up experience, he selects only a few. The choices alone constitute acts of judgment. But in addition, the artist transforms them by the artificial conventions of his art. For this reason, observation itself is not a passive act, but one that transforms the things seen by lifting them out of the full context of life's complexities and subjecting them to the handful of associations that the artist cleverly manipulates. That's a strange paragraph, but it sums up a very important issue about art that we tend to neglect if we don't spend a lifetime studying it. And that is that an artist is making active choices at every moment while working. And that all of these choices have an impact on the meaning of the work of art. That painting, the good ones, the things we focus on through the centuries, right? Great art is the result of a very deliberate practice on the part of the artist. And that we, as students of that art, approach it from that point of view. That everything there is there for a reason. And is the result of a deliberate act, not simply by chance. And that helps, I think, in many ways to interpret the works more fully and fruitfully, is if we start from that assumption, right? The artist is not neutral in his observations. The choices constitute acts of judgment. The choices are choices and are made for a reason. And observation is never a passive act. You choose to look at something. In this room, as I'm talking to all 10 of you, I can choose who I'm looking at. That's a choice. It shows some judgment, right, on my part. I think there's one of these little nuggets in here that sometimes when we're reading scholarly essays, we can come up with things that are these sort of wonderful nuggets that are, regardless of what the bigger point of the issue was, are very, very important for us. And that, I think, is one. Let's see if we can get back on here. Conflict found. Different Wi-Fi channels. I wonder I'm picking up the outside Wi-Fi here. Because I'm sitting over here instead of over there. It didn't change. Source search. Hey, I'm up. I'm back. I'm back in business. Okay, so very good. So, apart from that book that I wanted to get started with, did you find something that was like a thesis statement or a statement of what direction the entire essay is going to try to head? Was there something there that sort of set it up as an important part of the introduction to say, hey, this is what I should expect from this particular reading, from this particular chapter? Was there a section where you found something like that? For all the difficulty, Clark was fairly easy, wasn't he? This is the argument, even if the argument itself was tough. Is there a section here where you found a place where it looked as if Herbert is sending us in a particular direction? You'd obviously expect to find it before the first major section break, right? And there's a section break on the top of page 3, Paris Transformed, right? Which is also the title of the essay, but it's a subsection, right, or a section of the essay. So you've got to find it right before he begins to deviate out. So it's got to be somewhere on pages 1 and 2. There'll be something there that tells us where he's headed, what he expects you, the reader, to get out of this. Yeah, Christy? Mm-hmm. Right, which we don't do in this chapter, right? But eventually, as you mentioned, this is part of the book. Exactly. So we're getting there to a place where we say, okay, we're going to follow the impressions there, and when we follow them there, we're going to find something, right? But we're going to look for the effects on the once quiet villages of people who are going outside the city. And then to the Channel Coast to see what's happening there. Change, right? Now, he also is going to look inside the city, so we need to go back a little bit, I think, and pick up one more part of that. You know, it's like those rings, those concentric rings. So we've got the coast, that's way out here. We've got the suburbs, but he's also going to look at the city, right? And if you look just back a little bit, you know, the nature of their art, which superficially viewed, seems a wholehearted co-option of the new city. So what changes to Paris can be reflected in the art of the Impressionists in various spheres? Right? So it's very much the same thing that Clark was talking about, right? Paris has changed drastically at the same time that painting changes drastically. Is there a correlation? Certainly there's a correlation already. Is there a connection? Which is not the same as a correlation. Let's go back a wee bit further to sort of halfway down that column. Right? To the historian of Impressionism, you guys are okay there? Yeah, that's right. To the historian of Impressionism, it seems important to look at this altered Paris because its new streets and squares, its expositions, cafes, restaurants, and theaters are the images we see in the paintings of Manet, Degas, Morisot, Cassatt, Monet, Caillebotte, the hardest one to pronounce, and Renoir. Okay? So, there's a correlation. It's important to look at altered Paris because this is what they're painting. Okay? Go down to the top of the next paragraph. Does this mean that they are partisans of the emperor's new society? I love that turn of phrase. You know the story about the emperor's new clothes, right? Nobody wanted to admit that there was a Caesar's. Remember from Clark's reading, the emperor's new society was a huge failure in a lot of ways. Right? The emperor's new society. See right through it. Does this mean that they are partisans of the emperor's new society, that they celebrate its shiny exterior, that they wear masks of deity? Right? That's one way we can start to understand that connection. Maybe they are on his side. Probably not. Right? None of them are partisans, with the possible exception of Pissarro when it came to the communists. Right? But none of them are dyed-in-the-wool partisans for the emperor. They do not cozy up to the emperor, nor to the government which succeeded his. The natures of their art, which superficially viewed, seems a wholehearted co-option of the new city. Sorry about the 3-ring binder holes that have killed a couple words. I downloaded this from the web rather than scanning it myself. The nature of their art, which superficially viewed, seems to be a wholehearted co-option of the new city, is extraordinarily complex. Okay? They're not partisans. There is some correlation. They're painting stuff that's new. But what is that relationship? Here he's saying, hey, there's no easy answer. And that's why I noticed, nodding your head, is there a real, you said no, because it's hard to say that there's one answer to all of this. It's complex. So, as Lucy mentioned, we're going to look. We're going to look at the city. We're going to walk outside the city, look at the suburbs. We're going to walk outside the suburbs and look at the seacoast. And we're going to see what is that connection between the massive changes that are happening in mid-19th century France, Paris in particular, but France in general, and this new painting. It's not a real thesis statement in the way that we would ask you to craft one in the writing intensive craft. But it does establish a direction, where the rest of the essay is headed. So we're going to do these close reads. We're going to look at these, right? Each of these pictures he's analyzed in great depth and talked about, right? So let's look at Manet's World's Fair picture, right? This one he discusses on pages 4 and 5, and he reads it very closely. What sorts of things does he point out as being these important artistic choices? These judgments of observation that Manet does. That Manet has chosen looking at this. What do we see in this picture, according to Herbert? What does he indicate for us? The working class. So which person is the working class? It looks like he's watering, but it's a rake, right? That's not a hose. It's one of those old school brooms, right? So he's tidying up around there, right? It's a rake of sorts. But also remember that this is a monstrous but unfinished picture. So we have the working class gent down here, right? Who else does he mention, or what else does he mention as being parts of this picture? Constituent parts. The empire represented through the soldiers themselves over here. How else is Napoleon's empire represented here. He does mention very specific parts of the city that we do get to see, doesn't he? The two lighthouses, which are part of the exhibition, right? There's one of them. Where's the other one? Over here, right? The two lighthouses, which now you can see, which you probably couldn't in the reading, right? The two lighthouses that were part of the exhibition. And what does he say about those? Magic palaces. Who put those two things up? Were they both put up by the same people in this exhibition? Right, so this one's French, and this one's British, right? And that they weren't received the same way because the British left the ironwork open, right? But again, he's sort of bringing these things together, the wonder of electric light, right? This is the whole point of the exhibition, was to show the modernity of Paris and forward-moving 19th century thinking. Okay, so we've got the soldiers on the right, the imperial soldiers, who, by the way, are sort of taking a break. He gives that some context by talking about the fact that they're omnipresent at this point, right? They told somebody they couldn't sing the Marseillaise. You know the Marseillaise, right? Like that. The French national anthem, which now is, sung at every soccer match in France, but they said you couldn't because it meant revolution to them still. So, the 1848 revolution that we talked about on Tuesday was still too fresh in people's minds. Right? But there they are as a symbol of imperial control there, although somewhat relaxed. Right? Now they and our worker are these opposite poles, right? If you look at the way he's lighted them out in the canvas, we've got this and this, they're on opposite sides of that space, one close, one far. They're a teeter-totter, if you will, right? And everything else is kind of in between them. You can also see pretty clearly now that a good section of it is unfinished as well. See how sketchy it is over there? Because he never got around to completing this one. Within those poles of the working class and the emperor, we've got a ton of other people. Who else is there on this foreground that Manet presents us? What do they represent? Let's just get down here. Dog. I doubt he's, given the way he's dressed, I highly doubt he's walking with a goat, right? No, I think it looks like a Irish wolfhound or something, or an elkhound, a Norwegian elkhound, but it's a big dog, right? Which also, of course, suggests a very big apartment for him and his family, right? But you'll notice with each of these figures that Herbert's very careful. He doesn't put footnotes in it, but he's very careful about reading these figures and trying to understand them. And not just saying, hey, there's a kid down there, but realizing that the choice that Manet makes by dressing him the way he does, and I would argue even including that monster dog, right, is important for understanding the role he plays as a constituent part of this picture and what it means. Right? So we have him. And you'll notice the juxtapositions, right? We've got him, but we also have just, sorry about that. We've got him, but just behind that, we have these two kids. Who are they? Well-dressed kid with his dog. Dandy. Who gets around in white trousers in a dirty path and has them still white? I can't get through a day of work in a pair of white pants. I don't even go to the art studios anymore. Right? Who are those kids in the back? Children of workers are street ruffians, right? They're just latchkey kids, we used to call them in New York, right? Kids who basically are, today they call them free-range kids. You hear this phrase? A new way of child rearing is not to be a helicopter mom, but to have free-range kids. They go out and walk around and do what you will, the way we did when I was growing up in the 60s, That's what they are. They're sort of street ruffians, and they're the exact polar opposite, socially speaking. economically speaking, from the little dapper kid with the straw hat in the foreground, right? So we have them as well. We have other people here, and they're all intended to illustrate different parts of Parisian society. So we have two very finely dressed gents here, a couple here with a parasol, a woman on horseback, all by herself, which itself is somewhat fascinating. And then we have this group here that's pointing to the exposition in the background. So what does he draw from all of this? What does the foreground then represent? What kind of idea does this conglomeration of people represent? A divided class, but also coming together for this exhibition, right? All of friends. And where are we here? Do you know? I think he says at some point. He said that Manet, remember, had an exhibition, a private exhibition of his works at this expo. And it was just around the corner on the river. This is a region that's actually right across the river from the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower wasn't built until 1889, so it's not there yet, right? But we are literally, the Eiffel Tower would be right there, if it were there. And we're at that mound on the other side, it's called the Trocadero, and it was the exposition area, right? And this is the mountain that we read in Clark that was lowered by 20 feet to provide exactly the sort of view that we have here. Let's get rid of that, right? That Eiffel Tower drawing. But we're looking out over it, and we're looking across the river. So right in here is the Seine. And the only way that we know it's there is that this is an exhibition boat that's been moored on the side of the Seine. We don't see the river, we see the exhibition itself. So we're looking across the river to this great expo that's taking place across the banks on the banks of the river. Right. So it's presented to us as, in many ways, a part of this changing Paris, right? In this case, a very special exhibition of it. Okay. Richie, look like you're sitting on a question or not? Okay. I'm not going to look at every picture he does as closely as that, but he does give very, very close readings to each of these works, right? So if we look at Renoir, you guys want to hear a cute story? This is a side note. I had vowed many years ago I was never going to show Renoir in class because I really hate Renoir. Like, I don't dislike Renoir, I loathe him. I think he's like the worst painter maybe ever. Except this one, this one's all right. But on the norm, Renoir just make me want to retch. And I've gotten through 29 years of teaching and never showed her Renoir until right now. Right? This is the first time I've ever shown Renoir in a class. And early Renoir in the 60s, he's not horrible yet. Not all gauzy and wedding cake colors and no sense of anatomy or space or structure. Right? No deep darks, no bright highlights, all this sort of nice washy 30 to 70% colors. Here he's doing okay, but on the night. So that's my little anecdote. You guys are the first people to ever see Renoir in a Mark Roberts class. Ever. Anywhere. So here let's turn to the page he talks about this. He's on 6 through 8, right? He gives us a really close reading of this picture. It was on loan to the National Gallery a few years back, but it lives in San Diego. Right? What are the constituent elements of this that make it an important picture for the things he's trying to say about the Impressionists? What sorts of things does he focus on as he's talking about, again, Renoir's choices? Renoir's choices as a painter. What sorts of things has he chosen to show us? Indeed, Renoir's favorite spaces in the city, right? But at the same time, they are also perhaps some of Haussmann and the Emperor's favorite spots in the city. So let's back up a bit. Where are we here? What part of the city are we in? He kind of locates it for us very directly. I was going to bring in a map and put them all on the map for you because he says, we're here looking this way. We're here now looking this way. Right? But where are we here? He talks about it. The Pont des Arts is actually, this is the Pont des Arts here. It's a very small part of the painting, right? That's the Pont des Arts. But where does then Herbert help us to understand what else is there in addition to the titular bridge? Carousel. It's basically the same as it is in English. Carousel, the carousel, right? The Pont de Carousel, exactly. And you'll notice that he doesn't show us the Pont de Carousel. We're simply standing in the shadow, right? And so we can see, this is what I think makes this actually a really good picture. It's this idea of it suggesting this Paris that keeps moving on beyond us, right? So we've got the shadow not only of the bridge, but of more people walking across it. And it gives you the sense of the people everywhere in Paris without having them block our view. If he had put them, where that tackle is. A tackle, right? That's the block and tackle, the stuff for tying up the boat. If he had put those people there to suggest the crowd, the milling, the movement, and whatnot, they would have blocked our view of the other stuff. So he's come up with this really ingenious thing. Let's put them in the shadows. So we know they're behind us. And we're part of this. Right? It's a great choice he's made insofar as the composition is concerned. Right? So he gives us the Pont des Arts. He gives us the shadow of the Pont de Carousel. What else is here? What are these buildings over here? That's what it is, the Châtelet, right? The Palais de Châtelet. It's Theatre de Châtelet. And those are still there. Those are brand new, right? And that's an important thing because he's focusing on the brand new. At the same time, not everything is brand new, right? What's the dome? Do we know? Does he say? We're too close to the river for it to be the Invalides, which is built in the 17th, 18th century. Right? But he does mention that what Renoir has done is he's wrenched us into the modern world in the same way that Haussmann does. That there's again this idea of a correlation, that we are focusing on modern Paris, that we have these figures in the middle here. What are they doing? They're doing more than walking. Where are they walking from? Where are they walking? We don't know where they're walking to. We know where they came from. The boat, exactly. So they're tourists, right? They're people out enjoying the spectacle of the city. They're people out enjoying themselves, right? Sightseeing. And they're all dressed in contemporary fashions, and Renoir gives us this wonderful sense of moving from there the city and then off that way. Right? As we were you allowed your eye to sort of move through the composition. Right? So if we think about this idea that Herbert's trying to trace what is the complexity of the connection or the correlation between New Paris, New Painting. We see with both Manet, with the spot exhibition, and with Renoir, with this image of the renovated areas on the banks of the river, that we're seeing a certain shared mindset that both seem to celebrate the changes that have come on Paris. Can we see that so far already? With the choices that they're making, right? They're not criticizing it, Right? They are indeed celebrating. I put these both on the same screen even though they're talked about in different sections. This one was, whoever PDF'd this when I downloaded it, I didn't realize that. They didn't put this picture in it. This is the Garden of the Princess, which is on one of the pages that has no text, and so they didn't stick it in there. Right? By Monet, which also shows the sand, but doesn't. It's hidden in the trees, and there are just these little ideas that you can sort of guess that it's there by looking sort of over here. You realize that there's the bank, and you can see some things that are along the bank. But we again have this idea that he's celebrating these broad, open spaces that are part of the new Paris. That Renoir on the right, this is a gauzy Renoir that turns my stomach, right? Gives us these brand new Haussmann buildings. This guy over here, right, is one of those brand new Haussmann buildings. But you'll notice that, and this is something Herbert brings up, it's all masked and obscured by this facade of trees. That really what takes up the real estate of the picture, if we think about the picture plate as being a plot of land that you could devote. Imagine you're a gardener as a painter, and you can plant this many peas and that many potatoes and this many ears of corn, you know. And Renoir is this gardener who can plant this Haussmann building, these people, these trees. And as you start to think of his plot of land, you realize tree and open air is given how much of the picture? 2/3 or so of the picture is devoted to this sort of whitewashing of the change. Because the true focus of the change, the thing that people disagreed with most, was this bit over here. And it's hiding behind the trees. And it's covered with the beauty, which is still part of the plan. But it's almost as if what he's doing is kind of the same thing that Haussmann was criticized for doing, which is making it nice and guarding the other bits that were kind of boring, and making the boring look better. You could almost, with a painting like this, argue that he's on the same side as Haussmann, as Napoleon. Even though we know that 2 years after this was painted, in 1877, Renoir wrote 2 essays that were harshly critical of Haussmannization. That he wasn't a partisan. But the pictures seem to show something at this early stage somewhat different. So it's a good introduction to trying to understand this correlation, right? The correlation between New Paris, New Painting. And he's doing this by reading the pictures as closely as he can, not taking anything in the picture for granted, because all of those choices that an artist makes are deliberate and have an effect on how the picture projects its meaning. After talking about the Monet picture, and even before he gets to the Renoir, right, he has an interlude for us, the end of Empire. Right? Doesn't really talk about pictures for that short section, but it's an important element to consider. On Tuesday, I wrote up on the board a bunch of stuff about the history of France, and we got us through 3 revolutions and got us all the way to Louis Napoleon, right? Remember this? 1848, Louis Napoleon becomes the consul of France, and then has himself declared Emperor Napoleon III in 1851. Then what happens in 1870? The end of empire. It's in this section. He brings up the old argument that a lot of Hellenization was to keep people from being rebellious, to stop them from mounting a new rebellion. But guess what happens? It's not a rebellion. Outright war. War with Germany. The Franco-Prussian War. Have you heard of that before, the Franco-Prussian War? Until I taught 19th century art, I'd heard about it a lot, but I never really knew what it was. It was in the back of my mind. I had no idea what it was. Prussia is a part of northern Germany, right? Not anything to do with Russia, Prussia. In studio art, you've probably seen Prussian blue in your tubes of paint, right? Same root word, but Prussia is a part of northern Germany. And Louis Napoleon's attempts to be emperor of France were met with great skepticism by other leaders of Europe, primarily because they were afraid of his uncle, or great uncle, right? You got another Napoleon as emperor of France. What does that mean? When is he going to start invading your Poland, your Germanys, your Italys, your Spains, you know? And so Germany, at the same time that Napoleon III is emperor, which is to say 1850 to 1870, at that exact same time, Germany is becoming a unified country for the very first time. German history, this is not in your text or anything, but Germans, right, politically, Germany had not been a unified country for most of its history, but rather had been smaller counties and duchies, right? And under Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany, and in the aftermath of Napoleon I, Napoleon Bonaparte, right? He is trying to pull Germany together to unify Germany into the German Union State, right? Of single country as large as France. And Napoleon III doesn't want him to do that, because he sees it as a threat, in the same way that Bismarck sees Napoleon as a threat. And in 1870, and I don't have the details for this, but basically in 1870, Bismarck baits Napoleon into a war. So there's a duck and cover, if you will, right? So it does a little prodding, and then Napoleon forces Napoleon to have no other choice but to attack Germany, even though Bismarck is significantly better armed and ready for it. That's what he wants. A provocation that will turn, and he storms into France. The whole idea is to throw Bismarck out, or to throw Napoleon out, right? He wants Napoleon out of office. So if you read, it said, Hauser was dismissed by Napoleon in 1870. Prussia, disastrous defeat. They rumbled towards Paris by mid-March. Napoleon III is on his way out, and the Parisians do something drastic. They declare independence from the rest of France because France has surrendered. This is, by the way, the start of the whole surrender monkey thing that you sometimes see in snarky political stuff. The French are surrender monkeys because they have a nasty habit of surrendering kind of quickly in wars. So in 1870, as Bismarck's Prussian troops are moving into France, France says, "Don't kill us, we're done." Right? And Paris says, "What? You haven't even started fighting yet. So I tell you what, you guys can go ahead and surrender all you want. We're not part of France anymore. We're independent. We are the commune of Paris." Right? So you see mention of communards, members of the commune. And Herbert's supposed to mention that, is quick to mention that none of the Impressionists, except Pissarro, supported the idea of the French commune. And that during the Franco-Prussian War, some of them just got out of town. Right? Monet goes off to London and then to Holland, right, to avoid military conscription. Other people, Basile, who was one of the first people to voice the idea of having an impressionist group, 7 years before they got together. Right, 1867. Basile says, hey, maybe we should kiss off the Sorbonne and start our own group. And he was drafted, died of the war. Died in 1870. Others fought in the war, survived. It's a huge issue, major event in French history. And the Commune didn't last. Bismarck got tons of troops. They're massed outside of Paris. So they're all like, to the barricades again, right? And they block up the barricades, and they're gonna fight against Bismarck, and they're gonna hold them off, and it lasts for like a month, maybe, before the troops roll in, massive executions, and they're just stomped, like brutally, humiliatingly stomped by the Prussians. Now the Prussians don't want to annex France. They don't have imperial designs. They want Napoleon out of there. And once that's achieved, out they go. New government's in place. That's all they really wanted. Okay? No lingering colonializing troops. Okay? This is a huge scar on the psyche of France, but it's also a huge scar on the city itself, because a lot of Paris was destroyed in 1870. A lot of what Haussmann started to do was stopped in its tracks. He's out of his commission. Napoleon, who sponsored it, is now out of office. As Clark mentioned last time we talked, right, it was a work unfinished. And it doesn't get started again until after the shame of the Commune and this country begins to regroup, 1872 or so. They start to pull together, they start to rebuild. Right? So this is a really important, and this is why he sort of interrupts talking about pictures for a second. You've got to realize that if I'm going to show you Monet picture from 1867 and a Renoir picture from 1875, these are two very different parts of French history, even though they're separated by less than 8 years. Right? One is before the Commune, before the Franco-Prussian War, before the defeat and humiliation and the pause in this great rebuilding campaign. And the other is after that. Right? So the Renoir that we were talking about is this grand boulevard that became in many ways the focus of the criticism of the New Paris. But it also appears in a time when France is now in a very different mindset. Rather than sitting around and kvetching about these changes to my old Paris, by the 1870s, it's like, we're alive, you know, we made it through, Paris is getting back on its feet again. It's a very different attitude. Our next reading for Tuesday is all about that, and you'll be happy. It's short, 10 pages, right? It's shorter by comparison, right? So, we've got the Commune as an interruption, both in history and in our text. Okay? Now, the Renoir picture leads us to this discussion that begins on page 14 of the Grand Boulevards, Les Grands Boulevards, which, as you can see from the map, is a fairly, I don't have the map to show you, but if you look at your reading, your handout, right, you can see from the map is a fairly small part of Paris. It's just to the north. Okay, Monet's picture here is, let's think. Yeah, if you were looking at Monet's picture, you see where it says Jardin de Tuileries, right in the middle of the big open space in that map? At the bottom of that map on page 14, figure 17, right? Jardin de Tuileries kind of runs at an angle, bottom third of that, right? Monet is on the bottom side of that map, looking toward the top of that map. He's looking across that garden, okay, in this picture. Because the Garden of the Princess is part of the Tuileries Garden, okay? And I don't see it on the map here right away. Renoir is not defined for us on the map, or at least you can't place it directly, but those buildings could be just about anywhere. This picture by Monet if you look north, up, see the first big black building, so right in the middle of that map to the north, right? Where large boulevards sort of tease off with one that's at an angle. Do you see that? I wish I had it here, but on your map. So go just due north of where the Jardin de Tuileries is, due up, and there's a big black building that's in a sort of triangle of streets where there's a broad boulevard running in front of it, and another broad boulevard that comes up on the axis of that building and tees off right there. You see it, Joe? Yeah. Those are the Grand Boulevard, right? And the one that goes across is one of the more important ones for us, in that that is the Boulevard des Italiens, which you saw at the National Gallery back in Sorrow. That big, broad boulevard, the one that has a little fleck of green paint in it. Right? That's right there. And so you can see that starts where that street plans. Boulevard names change at major monuments. So it may look like one street. It's like following Lee Highway to Old Dominion, right? It's just sort of, it gets goofy there, right, by Cassatt's and Arrow 1 and all of that, you know? You don't know which of the two you're on. Okay. The same thing kind of happens here. So it's actually Boulevard de la Madeleine at the left, then Boulevard des Capucines in the middle, and Boulevard des Italiens at the right. That one long street is all three names, okay? And that means that not only that Pissarro picture that we saw is on this boulevard, but so is Monet's picture here, which actually shows in the background here the Grand Hotel, right, which is mentioned in great length here. And the building that's next to it, which looks exactly like it. I think we talked about this when we saw the other one of these on Tuesday, right? How similar those buildings look. Well, they're identifiable. One's a theater, one's a hotel. But they are designed to have the exact same sort of look to them, right down to the fact that it was regulated how high each story had to be. So you'll notice that the same, right, these are the mansard roofs at the top, that they're at the same level, that the balcony level of the attic below it is there, and everywhere else you can see that the levels of the building are exactly the same on both the steps. Is this drawing on the screen helping or hindering? Helping? As long as I erase them quick enough, then we can go back and see the picture, not the big red lines, right? And the same broad boulevard that we see here is very similar to what we saw with the Pissarro downtown last week, right? So these are the Grand Boulevards. I want to look at the map a little bit closer here as well, because if we follow from where we were, okay, that's the Opera House. Okay, that's the Grand Opera, Phantom of the Opera. That's that one. Okay, go up and to the left. You can see where there's a line with dots on it. Follow that up and to the left, and you'll notice that the next big building you get to, really big one, is Gare de l'Ouest, right? The Western train station, which is now called Gare Saint-Lazare, St. Lazarus' train station, right? As in the Lazarus that Jesus rose from the dead grave, whose remains are in France. That's what we call it that. Right? In the west of France, you can get a train there and go see Lazarus' body down in Autun, right? And in front of that is running Rue La Saint-Lazare, right? And Gare Saint-Lazare is there. And then if we go up around the back of that, okay? So there's Gare de l'Ouest. You can see the train tracks all coming together, funneling together, and moving up that, right? Go around the left side of the Gare. We walk up, and we just do this on a Google map, it's kind of fun. Walk up that street, and you'll notice that it hits an angled street that leads up to the right. Okay? And it crosses the tracks. Got that? And it goes up and it hits this thing that says Place de l'Europe. Right? The Plaza of Europe. And then it backs back down and you see that's over to the right again on the Rue de Londres, London Street. Right? That's the bridge that Cabot painted. The big, massive industrial bridge with the dog and the guy looking over the tracks, right? And if you come around the Rue de Londres, about where the U in Rue is where Manet painted the railway. looking back over the tracks. That great woman down at the National Gallery that we saw last week. Right? So she's right there. That's where she sat. Now, unfortunately, you go see it today, they've torn down all that big industrial ironwork, and it's just much more cleaned up. Which is too bad. I was so excited to get there, because I finally made a trip there a couple summers ago. I'm going to go get some really great pictures of the artifacts. Right? And I did. I got some good pictures of there. I got my wife close right where mayonnaise girl is. Right? But that big superstructure in the Kaibot picture, right, which is coming up later, is gone now. Sadly, I like stuff like that. It's not there. Right? So you get an idea, like these are where these things are. And if you go up from there, okay, see where we are there now. Put your finger back. We're at the Place de l'Europe. We're at that bridge that Kaibot painted, right? Directly back behind that, you'll notice there's a little bit further up to the north. There's a place where it looks like 3 or 4 streets come together in one big star pattern. See that? One of them is Rue St. Petersburg. One is Rue Moscow. One is Rue de Turin. You see that? Coming together looking like an asterisk. Right? And it's just almost to the edge. Top left. That's where that famous picture, let's just go ahead. That famous picture by Kaibot, the one on the right, is where those things come together. Whereas the one on the left is the bridge we were just looking at. Right? These are all places that celebrate this new Paris. Don't they? I mean, this is what Paris is all about. And one of the things Herbert brings up in talking about Kaibot is that he's younger than the rest. He was only born in 1848. That means he was 3 years old when Napoleon crowned himself emperor. The third, Napoleon III, right? He was only maybe 10 when Haussmann started doing stuff. To him, the new Paris is the Paris he's always known. So, and he's wealthy, right? He's buying impressionist pictures as well as painting himself. That's his brother in their house, right? And there's a lot of these pictures in their house, looking out over one of these Haussmann boulevards, right? So it's from a very different class situation and a very different age, which affects the way in which he makes these choices, right? For him, I think this is an utterly fascinating picture, psychologically and everything. Because again, we shouldn't look at it as a picture of his brother, but that's not the point. The point of the picture is not, oh, it's my brother, I love my brother, he's standing in front of the window, I'll get in there because the light is nice. And I think that for Herbert and for Clark, and for some of the other days that we'll see, I think the first day in class I mentioned that Impressionism suffers from the fact that it is pretty pictures of light and color. But there's something to that as well. Those choices that they're making are actually wrapped up in really interesting and deep socioeconomic issues from the period. So you can like them all you want for how pretty it is, and then think about it, but he's making choices that aren't based on the fact that I like the light right now. Making choices based on other things that are here. And the more you look at Kaibot, the more it's really strange and fascinating, some of the things he's trying to get across. There are basically 2 people in this picture that make any difference. There's a horse-drawn carriage, there's a couple people right in the gutter, a few more people looking into windows behind them. Can you see that in the detail? Right? So 2 people are shopping. 2 people standing sort of in the line of those trees, but about to cross the street and maybe pausing because you can see just right here, there's something coming, right? There's something coming out from behind that building. So these 2 people can't cross the street the way they want to because that cart's in the way. This woman also is waiting because that cart's going to come in front of her, right? She can't cross the street either. And she's standing on, quite obviously, a little curb right there, right? And he's just watching this all take place. This is the new Paris. This is the traffic that's come in. It doesn't look heavy or anything, right? He's cleared out a lot of the traffic in a way. He doesn't show us the kind of traffic that Monet does, where the street is just crowded, right, with people in omnibuses, right, carriages. He doesn't show us that. He shows us emptier street. And we know that this is actually the view from his apartment, which is, if I remember correctly, it's not very far from where we were just looking on the map. So it's just around the corner, like 5 streets away. Right? So this is really his neighborhood. But what's also fascinating is sort of this interchange. Here, it's almost kind of creepy. And he's watching her, right? And I think this is where Herbert makes this great statement about observation is never passive. Observation is an active choice. You choose what to look at. And he is in the safety of his house. He is surrounded by his things. He is enframed by what his family owns. And she is vulnerable. I don't want to say this. I think this is what makes this picture really fascinating. She's a woman alone on the street. And probably doesn't even know that he's looking at her, watching her move. But he's intently gazing at her as she moves about. I think this makes this so fascinating because you think about the politics, right? Safety, closure, money, right? Solitude, vulnerability, different class, male, female, confidence, lack thereof. We start to project things into it. And then if we know that during this time period, both under Napoleon III and under the Third Republic, which is what followed that, it was not acceptable to be out on the street alone as a woman unless you're working that street, if you know what I mean. Right? Unless you were a prostitute. A woman alone should be accompanied by someone else, and this gives it a different kind of charge. Is he watching her for the idea that she is for sale? Is he watching her as the guardian of his respectable neighborhood? It just gives all sorts of incredible and fascinating sort of psychological charge. Right? Just to understand the place of these in the city. That's also true, I think, in these. I love the picture on the left. I just think it's fantastic, right? So if we go back to that little map that we had, right, we've literally just, okay, you can see how the bridge here comes. You come up here, right? The bridge does this, then this, and then that. Do you see that? It makes a sort of two-bended turn around that corner. So where we are on that map is we've just barely come out over the train tracks. Let me go back to that map. And this bit over here is the Place d'Europe. Right? So this is the street that leads to it. Another street leads away from it. That's the Rue de Londres over here. Okay? And where Manet painted the railway is back over here, looking back this way. Okay? So we're leading up to that Place d'Europe. We can actually put ourselves right on the map. We're on the Rue de Saint-Anne, I believe, just before it turns into Rue St. Petersburg. Whereas the next picture is just a little bit further up that same street. Right? These are right next to each other. But think of the dynamics here that we've been talking about, the idea of housemanization and the street, and what happens on the street. With the pont picture, the bridge, that couple's not together. She's not walking with him. Look at the picture closely. This is where, again, going back to closely reading pictures, really spending time thinking about what's really going on here. Look where he is relative to her. He's a good step ahead of her on the street, but he's turning around to look at her. He's got his arms behind his back. He's walking, strolling down the street. He's the typical flâneur. We read about that, didn't we? F-L-A-N-E-U-R. Upper-class strollers, the disengaged observer of the world around him, right? This thing that happened in Paris. And she's out for a walk by herself. So who is she? Probably. If she's not a prostitute, she's perceived as one. And that means that his turning to begin to look at her which she seems to not mind. Again, suggesting probably that she's a prostitute. But it becomes stranger. And again, it's a theme of looking, isn't it, in his work? A theme of taking a moment to look at something else, just like the man in the window. So these two are looking at each other. This guy's looking, right? This guy over here has started to look. And there's another fellow back there, just here, that's also leaning out and looking over the tracks, right? The working class folk, that's this guy, that guy, they're all intrigued by this wonderful view that they have. And this bridge was, people fawned over it because of the technology involved of spanning that kind of a space. That to them was technologically marvelous, right? But those two guys are all intrigued by it. This guy couldn't care less, right? He's looking at the girl as she's moving across the street. If we go to the other picture, what's he looking at? He's looking off to the left somewhere. We don't know though, do we? There's really no way to tell. I was trying to slide it notes because I'd like it to be. But he and the woman, and they're definitely together, right? Arm in arm, under a single umbrella, right? These are the ways that we can tell. He's not a step ahead of her. They're out for an afternoon walk, so she's a respectable woman, right? And they're looking off to the left at something we don't get to see. What have they heard? What have they seen? We don't know, right? But it's that clatter of the city. This becomes a fascinating bit over here, because you almost get the sense that didn't really show up on that slide over here. Him, right there it is. It's almost as if he's trying to catch a glance of her as he's about to pass them. They certainly have to move out of each other's way in just a second, right? Again, these are artist choices that they make. He's arranging these things together. And at the same time, you can't get over the fact that that is a huge part of this composition. It's plunging sidelines of Houses Boulevard. But unlike others who might criticize these or have to cover them up with Renoir trees, or Monet for that matter, he doesn't. He can celebrate them in a different way because of his social context. One last thing, and then we'll quit because it's 4:45. You notice that cart doesn't have a front wheel and doesn't have a horse. And again, it's this, I think in many ways what he's talking about is, and many of these pictures talk about, is life in the city and its transient nature. Now, I had slides for the rest of them, but the important thing I think for all of these is to think about, as Herbert, when you're reading back through this, is that he's giving these paintings an incredibly close reading, right? He's not going to take anything for granted that any of these artists have chosen to include within the picture. It's all there for a purpose. It's all there for a reason. There was somebody that wrote about literature once who said, nothing is noted that isn't noteworthy, right? Nothing is noted that isn't noteworthy. And that there's something to be achieved in understanding these pictures by paying attention to these very deliberate choices that the artists have made. And I think that as you begin to think about your term paper topic, which is due today, right? Did I say next Friday? Is when you register the topic with me? Was it next Friday? Okay, very good. Good, I'm glad. I'm glad. Don't yell at me because I have one so far. And it's like, oh, good. I was thinking, like, God, you guys are a bunch of suckers. But then I realized it's my fault. So, right, that's due next week. We have a reading for Tuesday, a short one on Monet, and the next reading with a response is next Thursday. I have not heard back from the curator at the National Gallery. Right, I don't want to pester her, but if I don't hear from Tuesday, we'll just plan on not doing it here in class instead. I've got some good pictures of it. And we'll talk more about Manet here in class with that reading. Your peer reviews of your classmates' essay are due back to me today. As soon as I get those in, I will forward them around. I've got a few in right now. I'm going to wait until I get the lion's share, and then I will reach out to people who haven't done it yet. I would like those back on Tuesday. Is that going to be your question? Okay. So I'd like those back on Tuesday, okay, to me by email for the final checkoff on that. Is the revised part of that. Great, you had a question. I will get rid of it when you email it to me. What you need to do, okay, maybe we should on Tuesday do a little Microsoft Word, how to do those things. Remind me, okay, Tracy, because when I get closer and I've done these readings, I have this PowerPoint thing, I will just forget, okay? So please remind me and I can do that on the fly, all right? So that's for Tuesday. Again, if you're still here in an hour, come to the